This story starts off in January of 2021 when I got this picture of this little 3x3 staring directly at the camera. And at the time, we didn't really think anything of it. We just thought he was another yearling buck that was in the area. He wasn't really anything impressive. It was a yearling buck. There's nothing that we were really like, wow, this deer could be really something in a couple of years. He was kind of unique, yes, but those genetics don't always carry through till, by the time they're 4.5 and above. So we didn't really think anything of it. And we continued with our spring season, turkey hunting and shed hunting, and kind of put that away as just another picture of a yearling buck. Jumping to January of 2022, I started getting pictures of this mainframe 3x3. It's a 7-pointer with a little crab claw on the right side, but a mainframe 3x3. And I started getting pictures of him all the way through February and into March until he shed. And I didn't really think anything of it. I figured it was the same deer that I had seen last year. This year he looked a lot more impressive genetically, but it didn't look like he was going to jump anything crazy. As a 2.5-year-old, we just kind of watched him and kept it in the back of our minds. Didn't really have a name for him at that time because he wasn't really anything impressive. We didn't know if he was going to keep that 3x3 frame or if he was going to jump into something more. Jumping to shed season of 2022, I was putting on miles for piles per usual, as most people do. And I wasn't really looking for his sheds. I was looking for a couple other bigger ones that we had on the farm at the time. And I was walking the field edge one day in March and stumbled upon this 3-point shed. And at the time, I didn't really think anything of it. But once I got back home and I started, doing my research on the photos, I figured out pretty quick who he was. So it was pretty easy to match up the shed to the pictures that we have of this animal. At the time, we didn't have a name for him. So we just kind of kept tabs on this animal. I didn't really think he was going to turn anything crazy special by any means. You never know with these animals. We just kind of took tabs on this deer and said, okay, maybe that's a deer that could turn into something really cool when he gets a little older. At the time, he was second on our hit list, and so he wasn't really anything crazy in 2022. Now, in the fall of 2023, I started getting pictures of this massive 3-pointer, just this big framed 3x3 in late November all the way in December. I got pictures of this massive 3-pointer. At the time, he wasn't our number one shooter. We had one ahead of him that we were looking to kill. And this guy was a 3.5-year-old. We knew instantly who he was, finding his shed prior. And so it wasn't really a question of who he was. We knew he was 3.5. And, we were impressed with how he looked. And we were debating on whether we should hunt this deer just because he was so frequent as a 3.5-year-old, and he was just really unique and impressive. And we weren't sure if he was going to make it through the fall. Once he made it through that November rifle season in Nebraska, it's that middle week in November, we kind of said, hey, we'll give him a pass because the success rate of him making it through is way higher. Still got tons of pictures of him through December, January, February, and March, and was really impressed with how he looked. But overall, we were really excited for the fall of 2024 because then we knew for sure at 4.5, he should really look impressive. Being such a good 3.5-year-old, we figured at 4.5 he could really look good. We figured he'd keep that same frame as he did as a 2.5-year-old. In the 3.5, he'd probably keep the same frame going into 4.5-year-old. We weren't sure what he'd really do if he put on anything else besides just keeping that mainframe 3. So kind of had that in mind with him going into the fall of 2023, that maybe in 2024 he could really be something special. So we kind of gave him a pass, and I actually did not fill my tag in the 2024 season. Once we started getting photos consistently of this deer and we knew who he was, we started calling him the Big 3. And the name just kind of stuck. It's nothing crazy, but we just figured that name, you knew who he was. It told us everything about him just by that name, so we called him, and it stuck. Because he really was just a Big 3. The name stuck, he stuck, and we were hoping that the 2024 season would be something for him that was pretty special. Heading into the 2024 shed season, we were pumped to find his sheds. I put on a lot of miles looking for his antlers just because he was a deer that we had a lot of history with. I thought he was really unique in his genetics, so put on a lot of miles looking for his sheds. I did find one of them. It was down on the bottom where he had bedded down, stayed out of the wind, and found one side. And it was the side that he did not bust up. He busted up one side, busted up a brow tine on his left side. And so I found his right side in the middle of March and was just blown away by the size and mass that he had put on from the year prior. And his camera doesn't give this antler justice how big this is, but it's a pretty awesome antler. I mean, I can fit my hand around it. The mass isn't crazy by any means, but still just a heavy antler, really kind of impressive and unique animal. The brow tine is what got me the most, just because that's a pretty long brow tine. That's 5-6 inches. So really unique shed. that we found in the spring. I couldn't find his left side, which is fine. I was pumped when I found his right, and I wasn't really worried about finding his left side. So getting to hold that antler in my hand and see, the massive potential that this deer had at only 3.5, he looked like that. 4.5, we were pretty pumped for. And at 4.5, we were pretty sure he was going to be a shooter. I usually like to get him past 4.5, but the genetics that he had and the neighbors hunting hard with rifle, we figured, at 4.5, he was going to be a shooter that we wanted to try to kill. Heading out of the spring, we kept getting pictures of him as he started to grow into velvet. I ran cameras all summer into the fall, and we got pictures of him all through different stages of growth, all the way through May, June. And then in July, we got one photo of him looking away from the camera in this creek bottom. And at the time, from that picture, he looked dang good. Brushed in the blind right here. There's not really a spot for a tree to get up in a tree, so we had to make do and brushed it in pretty nice. It'll be better once everything dies and it'll blend in better. But did a lot of cutting on the cedar trees for a shot, and then there's our mock scrape right there. And there's a 30-yard shot from the blind to the mock scrape. Pretty good setup. We'll see. Yeah, I'm done. I'm tired. I'm soaked in sweat, ready to go back. So in the summer of 2024, I knew I had to do some work on the farm to try to get ready for this animal. And so I went in June and put together a mock scrape, put together a blind, brushed it in, got it all set for a 30-yard shot on this mock scrape where he had been walking through in the spring. And so that was all prepped and done, ready to roll. And so we had done that in an attempt to really hone in on this deer and really give ourselves a chance at this animal. And so I'd done that work in the summer, and we were pretty sure that it was gonna be a kill spot for us come fall time. Heading into the fall of 2024, August and September, we had no photos of this deer. I wasn't too worried just because the deer usually do that. They're usually out on the ag fields at this time, and I wasn't really worried about getting photos of this deer. I kind of figured I knew he's alive. I knew he probably was fine, so I wasn't too worried. And then October came, and the middle of October, I believe it was the 15th, we got photos of this deer crossing the same creek bottom, and he didn't really look impressive in the photos. Antler-wise, he didn't really look that good. We thought maybe he'd get some more growth after that photo in July, but he really didn't. We were kind of debating whether he would be a shooter or not come fall. As we got into November of 2024, I was hunting a different farm, so I wasn't hunting where the big three was. And I had only basic trail cameras in that area. So I didn't have any cell cameras in that area. And so I didn't have any current intel on what deer were there and what weren't. So about mid-October was the last time I checked those cameras, and I let them sit into the start of November. I wasn't in there, and I did a card pull on November the 11th. And so that was the first weekend in November I had pulled those cards. And so I did my first card pull on November 11th, which I had sitting on that mock scrape that I had made in the summer in front of that blind where he had been walking in the spring. And then I had cameras on a different draw across the farm, and then another scrape I had put a camera on. The 11th was the weekend of special landowners. So it gives landowners an opportunity to go out a week before rifle season for Nebraska starts, and they're able to have 3 days to go and harvest a deer with a rifle. And so the neighbors were hunting during that weekend. I really wasn't worried about it just because I thought the big three wouldn't be showing up till later November like he did the year prior. And so I wasn't really worried about it. Well, I checked these cameras on the 11th of that weekend, and he had been daylighting in front of this blind almost every night, was in the area every day for those first 8 days of November. And I was just kicking myself because he had been there all through the beginning of November, and I wasn't hunting that area. Every evening he was in there, hitting that mock scrape, hitting the scrapes 500 yards away. And so I came back to the house on that weekend, kind of kicking myself at the same time. I was pumped because he was in there. I knew he had been in there. The last picture I got of him was the 9th. So it had been 2 days before I checked those cameras. And so I knew he was in there. And I got back home, and I was talking to Dad, and he goes, "Hey, did you hear the neighbors shot 2 big ones this weekend?" And immediately I knew that wasn't good. And so I'm like, "What they look like? Do you see pictures? Who was it?" And he goes, "Well, they shot a big 3-pointer." And I knew right then and there that the big three was dead. When you have a lot of history with an animal, you want to be the one to harvest that animal. But God works in mysterious ways, and I didn't need that deer. The people that were hunting there lost a loved one a month prior to taking that animal, and obviously they needed that a lot more than I did. Everything happens for a reason. It sucks that I wasn't able to harvest that animal, but they needed that a lot more than I did. So I texted them and said, "Congrats." I shared pictures with them just because I had a bunch of history with this animal. They sent photos back of him, and he was a brute. He just was everything that we thought he was. And so the story ended there. We figured we'd share this one with you just because he was going to be our film for this fall. That deer we had patterned out pretty dang good, and we did everything right except go in there and kill him. We should have. We did everything right up to that point with the prep and the setup. That mock scrape, I had worked trying to get them to come use it, and they finally started using it, and I wasn't in there soon enough to capitalize on that deer. That late October to beginning of November timeframe can be magical. Lesson learned, I guess, in that aspect, but we figured we'd share the story with you just because it's a really unique deer, and we spent so much time with this animal and tracking and had so much history with this animal that we thought we'd share the story with you guys. So it didn't end the way we wanted it to, but it ended the right way. So thank you guys for watching this one. If you stuck all the way through to the end, that was a lot of talking, so I'm sorry about that, but thank you guys for watching. Hopefully we'll have some more content coming out here pretty soon. It's been a kind of a slow deer season for me and Devin, so we're kind of hoping to capitalize here in December. But we'll see you guys in the next one, and thank you guys for watching.